Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mortgage Tech Talks. I'm back at it. I'm doing one of our solo episodes, which honestly have been some of our most successful so far. That's exciting to see. So I'm excited to do this one. Today, we're going to, of course, address the topic du jour, AML, but it's going to be a slightly new twist on it. I think an interesting twist. So you're definitely going to want to check out that segment. It's our first one. We get right into it there. After that, we talk about the new mortgage rules, going from a million to 1.5 and the 30-year AM, and some cool ways to really kind of deal with this new paradigm. I think it's going to change quite a bit and how you can use tech to help with that. And then finally, some moves at the executive level at some big tech companies and really what that means and what we can expect from it. So some cool little market updates. I think each of them quite a bit of meat on the bone there, if you will. So can't wait to see you on the other side. Truth maybe is that every time you put a document in an email, that is the most vulnerable place. All right, let's get right into it here. There's a lot to talk about today. And where I'd like to start at the very top is the topic du jour, if you will, what everyone is talking about, of course, are the new AML requirements. What's new, what's exciting is that each platform is coming out with kind of like their new solution. Some are kind of taking a really strong stance on it. Others are kind of giving a little bit more of a, hey, here's a partner that does this really well and enabling it that way. Couple different approaches there. I won't go too deep into it, but I think it does dovetail a little bit on a couple of discussions we had before about the idea of like this all-in-one versus more specialized approaches. And I think this is just another example of that. I think the solutions that have been historically all-in-one are really taking it on, and the solutions that have been more noteworthy, focusing on maybe just the deal submission, interacting with lender side of things, they're more so saying, hey, here are great partners that can help you with AML. So a couple different approaches, and I think that's continuing to come out. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, my plan would be to come out with a little bit more of a deep dive on each of the solutions for those platforms that are doing solutions. But that's not this episode. This episode instead, what I'd like to take a little bit of time talking about, which I thought was interesting, and I want to spend some time talking about is this article I saw by Geoff Willis, of course, is part of Newton. There's a lot of stuff here, but the area I want to talk about here is this fact of uniformity being more commonplace. So that's his, bold prediction, basically saying, hey, do you know what? Broker owners now with these new regulations may ask their agents to use the same CRM. So kind of getting a little bit more consolidated across the board in terms of these tech platforms and saying at the brokerage level before you had the luxury of allowing anyone to kind of do everything, these types of regulations might mean that there's more of an incentive to get everyone on the same platform and really kind of own it a little bit more, right? Own that process that the mortgage agent is actually doing with their clients. And so, I think it brings up an interesting thing where first off, you have to kind of say, okay, what is the nature of a mortgage agent versus, let's say, an employee at the bank? And I think, of course, it is that independence to go out and talk to the customers the way they want, run the business the way that they want. That's, fundamentally a big difference. So, the very nature of a mortgage broker is being independent. But what we're seeing is that, these types of regulations that come in, and I think I've talked about it before on this podcast, is giving opportunities, I think, for two big players to eat up a little bit more of the mortgage space and maybe chip into that independence a little bit. And the two players are, of course, tech players. So we look at that article. So Velocity obviously is looking at this, and I understand why, is I think an opportunity to drive their hooks in a little bit deeper, become a little bit more of a platform that everybody uses. So I think that makes sense for them and their business. But it's also the broker owners to kind of come in. And I think what it leads to is consolidation in that space. The broker owners, some broker owners might not, have the capabilities come in and put together these systems that'll do it. And so, you're going to kind of get more consolidation in that space. And consolidation, I think, leads to less choice and less independence there. And so I think it's an interesting trend. I respect both Velocity, any broker owner who's thinking that way. They got to do what's best for their business. But I think it begs the question of kind of what's the long-term, play here or role of the mortgage broker as more independence gets taken. Where does that lead us? I don't think it leads us to the point where everyone's going to be salaried and just part of, a bank, that the channel is done. I think it's far from that. But I think a more likely outcome, a place where we could end up, is something a bit more similar to PNC home and auto insurance. And so to take a quick detour there, we used to actually sell a bit of software in that space. And really what the dynamic of that space was that there was, yes, still brokers, there was still the channel, but it was more dominated by big brokerages. Those brokerages would continue to acquire and acquire and acquire and eat up these smaller guys. And then as soon as they did, they would force what they call their BMS, their broker management system, for, ding, 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 compliance reasons. To be completely honest, I didn't know the nature of the compensation structure, but I think it was a lot more salary plus commission, right? And that, okay, these agents, quote unquote, they were still part of that brand. They actually got a little bit of a salary for it, but there was still a big component that was commission. But, there was that dynamic there. So, I think that's just something that could be down the line. And, when I look at the industry, there's a lot of, pros and cons with that sort of thing, but I think it does eat a little bit into that independence, and it ultimately gives less choice to the end consumer. So I think it's something we've got to keep our eye out for and decide the future that we want. But I think, yeah, regulation is, the thing that leads to that, right? So we'll see. We'll see how it goes over the next couple of years. But again, from a tech perspective, I think it's just another opportunity. Get your users, I guess, a bit more dependent on using your system. And we're seeing that in articles like what Geoff just put out. All right, switching gears, that's AML. Like I said, hopefully a bit more stuff there. The next thing I want to talk about in here are the new mortgage rules. I mean, if you're living under a rock, the big ones are, of course, that the insured cap went from 1 million to 1.5 million, great. And then the 30-year AM can be applied to all first-time homebuyers, so not just the ones who have an insured mortgage, and anybody else who has a new build. So really just relaxing the lending criteria, allowing for more liquidity, more people getting qualified. The quick non-tech side of me says, okay, yes, more people are going to qualify, but yes, house prices are going to go up, and yes, things are going to get more unaffordable in the long run. In the short run, there's going to be a little bit of a burn. People are going to be able to get into some houses a little bit quicker, but the ratio, if you just, I think, simply look at ratio of maybe home prices to income, this rule is only going to increase that in the long term. That's my take. Call me, I'm crazy. That's not my area of expertise. Let's talk about the more tech side of things as it relates to that. So first and foremost, I'm going to kind of have one for the home team here, which is what a lot of clients are starting to talk about is, okay, how do I find then those first-time home buyers that we're maybe looking at in that 1.1, 1.2 range in terms of a house, and maybe weren't able to qualify because they weren't able to get the 30-year AM or to get the, an insured mortgage. So yeah, home team is, hey, get your CRM out, do those filters. You should be able to do that. If you say, hey, who's a first-time home buyer? When in terms of their, I guess, ideal purchase price in that 1 to 1.5 range, and reach out to them specifically. I think that's where, something like a system can really help identify those types of things. And, to be fair, it doesn't have to be Blue Mortgage, doesn't have to be anything. It's just a spreadsheet. I think that just getting your clients into an area where you can quickly do these types of filters, identify these types of opportunities, I think is so important. And the other kind of bold prediction I'll say is I think more of these types of things will come out. I think there'll be continually be new regulation. I mean, in terms of the first topic we talked about, but also new ways that rules are being bent and twisted to get more and more people to qualify. I just think that's the way of the tide right now. And so get prepared for that, right? Maybe you don't have that CRM today or that Excel sheet today or whatever it is to do those filters quickly. Another one's coming and another one's coming after that. And so just get something in place. You don't know exactly what the criteria will be or what they might, change the rules for, but just get that spreadsheet, track those really key stats. And so the next time something comes out like this, you can very quickly filter. The other kind of cool thing, I'll just kind of use this as a shout out for a good friend, Ben over at Ben Digi Tech. He has his app. Really cool. I mean, this is just a post that he did. He talks about, okay, if you're at that 1.5 range, if you go all the way there, what does that look like? And you get an insurance policy for that. You can see showing 57,000 for that default insurance and required income about 325. So really cool insights. My point with this one is just, first of all, crazy numbers, pretty cool. But then also, something like this app is a great way to engage with your clients when these types of things come up. Yes, you can kind of do generalities, but people want to know what these types of rules mean for them. And that for them part is so, so key. And an app like this is a great way to, adjust those sliders and allow people to put in their specific scenario, and so they can understand exactly what it means to them. So a really cool tech plan, a really cool way in which Ben is using technology to really explain these types of interesting things. Okay, and finally, I like to do 3 topics in these kind of market updates. The last one I'm going to do is basically a bit of an announcement I saw come out, I think it was a week ago now, probably 2 weeks ago by the time this actually releases, is kind of what's going on over at M3 Tech. We see that Jerry Lowe just got appointed the CIO, Chief Information Officer. To be completely honest, I don't know what the information is versus like a CTO, Technology Officer, but I think it's a great move. I mean, my takeaways really quickly there, of course, this replaces Andre, who left the firm, or yeah, I don't know what the order of operation was, but basically, yeah, went to a different opportunity. I think he's back earlier in the year, maybe around April or May, and he's coming in and doing that. I mean, through my role as, the founder of Blue Mortgage, we of course have an integration with Boss. We've worked with the M3 Tech team, worked with Jerry in that role, and my take on it is he's going to bring a really good entrepreneurial spirit. I've always thought of him as kind of like a that entrepreneurial vibe. And I think that's really great. I mean, entrepreneurship is what we need, whether that's within a company or whether it's, starting a startup, whatever it is, entrepreneurs are needed. So I think that's really great. But I think the other kind of interesting thing, the other signal that it sends to the industry is that, yeah, M3 Tech is continuing to really bet big on technology. I think that, Jerry is one of their top executives, and they've decided to put him in that technology role, leading up or being very close to the top of their technology stack. And so, yeah, they're kind of going pedal to the metal, if you will, in terms of the technology side of things, putting their smartest minds, their best minds there. And I think that's going to manifest in probably 6 to 12 months from now, some really interesting things coming out. So, even in all this flux, in the first couple points, you maybe talked about regulation and then the twisting and bending of rules. Despite all that, we see these companies still being very bullish on the technology that they're putting out. And I think that should be the signal to the rest of us saying, okay, well, we need to at least stay smart about what's going on in the tech space. Okay, that wraps it up for today. So 3 things again. We talked about AML. Again, hopefully we can have an episode in a couple of weeks kind of evaluating the different options. Still kind of getting smart myself on that. But it's an interesting play of how these regulations are allowing tech companies to take more and more market share. That's a trend I think everyone should pay attention to. Number 2, do mortgage rules using great tools like Ben's at BenDigi, the Canadian mortgage app, to allow customers to see what it means to them. I think that's so important. And getting I was going to say CRM, but just database in place so you can prepare for next time. And then finally, some big investment from the M3 Tech Group into their technology. I think it's great to see, and I'm excited to see what comes out of that. And hopefully, yeah, in 6 months, I can do a podcast episode of some really cool things happening over there. So with that, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Please put your comments below, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.